teams. Now, what I thought was very interesting was actually when we look back at last week's ban, Schalke put a lot of emphasis onto banning away the Malzahar.
Right.
Regardless of what side they were on, they always wanted to make sure that their opponents did not have that available to them. So I'm curious as to whether or not they're going to put the same sort of priority on that, or whether or not they're going to stick to more meta stuff.
We're going slightly differently on this one because that's a Kha'Zix ban coming out. So rather than the Malzahar focus, it could still be the last ban. Ivan first pick. When you see a Kha'Zix ban already, you could be looking at that for Schalke now. Varus is out of there as well. Zyra is high priority too.
There's the possibility of a Lulex Lee Sin in there as well, something that he was very well known for in the past. The fact that there have been so many AD carry bans also suggests that we may see a Jhin priority coming out from the side of Schalke.
I'm surprised by the Ashe ban, in all honesty. Most people are going back to the Caitlyn instead of the Ashe now as kind of that third tier. Ezreal as well, pretty strong up there.
But this is going to sound kind of strange, but Korean Ashes are always so good. And Pilot, we've seen his Ashe time and time again. There's the Jhin you were talking about, Vedi. I think after the Ashe ban, that's where it changes from Ivan, but now Kairi gets it. Lulex likely will go to something like the Graves or the Lee Sin that you were talking about, but on this rotation now, PSG are caught without an AD carry. We may even see Schalke ban away the Caitlyn, ban away Sivir in the second phase if PSG don't prioritize an AD carry here.
I wonder if Pilot will move towards an Ezreal priority, something that over in the LCK they've actually had a lot of priority towards in general. Why there's so much value over Ezreal is just very interesting. It seems to be very region specific, but there's no need to lock it in right now, right? There's an element of risk not getting it in this rotation because Schalke could further pinch the AD carry position, but the great thing about AD carries is as long as they get items, they have value, right? So let's make sure if you're PSG to guarantee some strong laners. Getting the Shen means that they have fantastic global pressure. The Ryze gives you priority over mid, but it does enable some power picks for Schalke.
Yeah, and now with the Jace available, you've got the Jace into Shen matchup in the top lane, which just means Jace can push, and then you look to Siege. Of course, could flex some mid, depending on how the second phase goes here, but PSG, I mean, is this support AD carry? Something's getting pinched after this pick.
I feel like you have to go for Misfortune. The advantage is you could actually pick your jungler now, pinch junglers from the enemy team, and then you trade, because Schalke can't pinch both support and AD carry, so you're likely going to get one or the other.
And they've actually gone for the Karma here instead of the Misfortune. I really like that. The flexibility as well from it. You can take it AD carry if you really want to. I'm really surprised by how this pick ban has actually gone, because we're usually pretty good, especially on this patch, of predicting pick and ban. But all it's taken is an Ashe ban to totally throw it for a loop.
Well, I mean,
it's still very standard, right? We're still seeing a lot of common picks that you would normally see.
There's still a trend here, like when you look at what synergizes well with the Karma, Sivir is still available if they want it. You mentioned the Ezreal if Pilot wants that too. There goes the Caitlyn, so clearly Schalke are saying, well, let's just put Pilot on something that we can catch him out on and then end up killing him. But good side lane so far out of PSG. Mid lane threatening pick of Katarina is now gone. No real other focus outside of that LeBlanc on mid lane.
If you're PSG, you could look to ban away the Syndra to... damn, they got that just before I could. So the fact that they went for an early rotation on the Ryze...
If you're Schalke, I think you might ban out Caitlyn this game.
Well, to quickly go for Schalke, I think that either an Ezreal or a Sivir ban would be good here. Or, okay, right, never mind, I give up.
Wait, this is explainable though. When you look at it, Kha'Zix is gone, Rengar is gone, Camille as a flex to jungle is gone. If Kairi's been spamming the Warwick, he'll now default to something like an Elise. Or a Lee Sin, we've seen both out of him, and of course they're looking at that jungle still available, but this just pinches some of the junglers that are just more prominent in the early game here, because if an early game jungler supplements a Ryze and a Sivir, suddenly PSG have this insanely good scaling comp that already gets ahead.
I think the worry then comes, though, PSG have great scaling, but their early game, in all honesty, isn't the strongest. They've got relatively safe lanes, but the actual damage output from them is quite weak across the board early game.
But you could compensate for that by going for an Elise, right? Start Snowball in the mid lane. I wouldn't be surprised if Schalke went for a Corki right now. It would synergize nicely with the composition overall in terms of your poke. I like the Ivan pickup from Schalke because they realize that they don't actually have much of a tank. And while Ivan might not be the best tank, Daisy certainly is. You have an effective front line in the form of that ultimate. You provide good utility, and I think that their Siege and Poke could actually round things out nicely if they decided not to go for the Corki.
They still can siege and poke, though, because look at this threat. The Orianna, the Zyra, you've got Daisy's going to walk up to a tower, and suddenly you've got this defensive capability where you can push a little bit forward with the Jhin, with the Jace, and you've got all the time in the world. The difficulty is you're against Sivir, you're against Ryze, and if that gets locked in, you're against hard engage with the Shen Hecarim combination coming out. PSG are looking to do 90 minutes of sprinting across the pitch on this.
Certainly are. I mean,
Gotta go
PSG
fast.
have drafted quite a potent team fight composition come the late game. They've gotten themselves a pretty safe 1-3-1 as well, which I think is the biggest issue that I have with the Orianna pick. The problem with Orianna as a champion is you really can't effectively put her in a side lane, right? One of the common things that you have with mages is if you throw them with a TP, sure, they can join the fight, but they can't really set up an effective flank. So you have to go for a defensive summoner spell. In this case, likely to go for a cleanse. So it's very risky to move her into the side lane. So you're setting up for a 4-1, which means that you're relying a lot on Smitty J to have a successful laning phase, which could be a point that PSG look to punish.
How does that laning phase really work? Because we don't see Jace that much, mostly because he gets banned out a lot. And you have got Spirit's Refuge from the Shen, which stops the auto attacks coming in. Does the Jace just continually push it in?
For the most part, yeah. A lot of it is the trade gets denied with the Spirit's Refuge, but that doesn't stop Jace from just shock blasts and, you know, pushing the tower.
His wave clear, right, is extremely effective in the early game. Shen can't really match it, and it could very well be a swinging point in this game, which is super important for both these teams. Remember, there's already a bit of heated rivalry between both of these organizations. Very kind of them to donate this merchandise to just explain how hype this matchup actually is.
It's incredibly hype. Like, people sometimes don't realize just how big these sort of football rivalries are, and we are into the game, onto the Summoner's Rift, onto the field of battle here between Schalke and PSG. The first time these two huge organizations have ever met on Summoner's Rift.
First time on Summoner's Rift, well, when they met in the Europa League nearly a decade ago, back in 2008-2009, it was Schalke 04 coming out 3-1 in that matchup. So if Schalke can do the same thing again, it'll be a good basis.
We
of
only
building
play
their way
best of
into
twos,
the
I'm
LCS.
afraid.
I know, right? But maybe if they meet for a best of 5 later on in the split.
Always a possibility. Let's just look at this actual composition and how you really think it's going to work out, guys. Because VODS, you were talking about how you think PSG have great 1-3-1. You think Schalke are going to go more towards the 4-1. What is the intention for PSG to stop Schalke being able to just be as dominant as they were last week?
Well, I think PSG have the advantage in that they have two pushing lanes in both the bottom and the mid, right? Orianna's early wave clear isn't the greatest, largely because it costs a lot of mana, and her mana pool isn't the largest. When you compare that to Ryze, who can literally just spam EQ, 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 he's effectively a very effective pusher during the early game. Sivir Karma, no one really outpushes that. The wave clear is absolutely monumental, but what this allows is freedom for Kairi. He doesn't have to invest his resources into middle bot because the waves will all be pushing, so he can invest more of his resources into the top to try and shut down the split push, where I think Schalke are really going to rely on their success.
And he needs some of that freedom. Like, Hecarim is not an A-tier jungler. He is still a good jungler, don't get me wrong, but with the ghost nerfs as well, it's tougher for Hecarim to get into the lane. So I'm looking to Kairi now on a pretty old school, if you want to put the air quotes in, jungler, to see how he can get this started. The one thing it does give great start to is team fights. Hecarim, Sivir, Karma, Shen on top of it. Everything is built for PSG. Once they hit that item spike, when they feel comfortable with Ryze and Sivir after 3 items, suddenly you just explode the game apart.
And this is why I like PSG's composition so much more than Schalke's, because Schalke want to play the 4-1 setup, right? So they have a slow push in the bottom lane. They use the minion wave as their effective third line of pressure. So they have the 4-man unit mid, and they'll have the Jace up top. What PSG can do is they can just so easily force the fight with a Hecarim ult, the Sivir ult, have a Shen ult on top of that, a flank from TP from the Ryze, and that 5-man unit's going to get there so much faster than Smitty J is going to be able to stop them from doing anything. So I feel that PSG as a composition just has so many more options, but it relies, as you rightly said, Stress, on this Hecarim getting to a point where he has things like the Trinity Force, like those big items that enable him to have success.
As much as the dive is amazing from PSG, they had a weakness last time where Pilot would be left alone on the backline by himself. He was playing Jhin, he'd consistently get called out by kickers who would get in between the front line and the back line. It's a very real possibility that if you've got a Hecarim diving in, if you've got a Shen diving in, if you've got a Ryze diving in, Pilot just gets caught out.
But the best part of Sivir is you're going too. You're running in. You're like, everybody's going for the fight, and I am too. This isn't like the Varus where you get taunt flashed by Shen and you're kind of left there wondering what happened. So I completely agree with you. There is still that possibility of Pilot getting caught out, but that was a lot to do on the team priority on how they were defending him. On the side of Schalke, they snowballed very heavily off Lulex ganks. Here comes one mid.
Yeah, Lulex already onto Blank's Selfie there as well. Blank's just going to try and run away from this one. He's happy enough not to burn the summoners. Takes a little bit more damage, but still escapes.
And this time, it's Ivan. It's not Kha'Zix. It's not somebody that's going in and just completely bursting down the mid laner. So Blank didn't even have to burn a summoner on that.
Lulex using the early level 4 that you get from the incredibly fast jungle clear from Ivan, already cleared his entire jungle, just enables him to have that level advantage over Blanc, which means that even though he doesn't have much damage early on, he still has effective enough damage that he can usually force a few summoner spells, but good patience from Blanc to not have to burn anything. So he's just going to back away a little bit. Unfortunate back timing, because you can actually see the position of the wave is heavily pushing towards Selfie so that he can stall things out, but it was good enough that he can get himself a tier.
I want to focus on jungle for a little bit. We talked a lot about it today. Lulex has been incredibly impactful in the first week. He had an amazing, outstanding performance on the Kha'Zix. Kirei, really strong for PSG as well, although PSG didn't have the best of performances as a team. Isn't there a risk here with the Hecarim that you're just, if you don't get ahead, if you don't get towards that Trinity Force, if you start to lose out on fights, you are going to fall behind as a team, and then the main engage tool for PSG is just lost?
There is always that risk, but we might not have time for that as Selfie getting engaged on.
Yeah, Blank has a lot of mana here, and Selfie just has to try and run away. Still has flash. Kirei joins, he flashes away, and that's the summoner burn. Pretty
important. Lulex cut off the path of Kyrie there on the way into the fight. The Ghost, of course, now ramps up, so Blank and Kyrie just kind of accelerating towards Selfie, but the flash early gets Selfie out. Important little block on that river from Lulex just to defend his mid laner.
Also, sorry, it's also really important to note that Selfie saved his flash for as long as possible, which also demonstrates good patience from him. But one of the big risks that you have as an Orianna is that you have no escapes, you have no gap closes, which means that when we think back to last week, one of the biggest criticisms that Kyrie had was how he didn't really do anything, right? He had no impact in the early game. He played these scaling junglers where he couldn't look to make any plays, and he didn't really try to. But now he has a fantastic opportunity in the mid lane to really start snowballing things as Lulex looks to punish the no mana Kyrie.
Kyrie is still going to get all of those little razor beaks, so he'll be happy enough with that. He's actually quite far ahead on CS as well in that jungle matchup. But gold-wise, sitting about 300 in advantage, and not a huge lead, but the quicker you can get that Hecarim up towards the first item, the better it is for you as a team.
Yeah, it's a decent start out by Kyrie. Of course, we saw Lulex attempting to go mid lane, trying a little bit more gank focus off that level 4. Wasn't particularly successful, but certainly was answered well by Kyrie on the attempt in mid lane where they got Selfie's flash. So if they can, when Kyrie hits level 6, look at that mid lane. That lack of escape that you're talking about, VODS, that can be easily punished with the onslaught of shadows from a Hecarim.
And look at how overextended Selfie is right now. This is a massive window that Kyrie could just look to abuse.
Kyrie's not quite 6 yet, so might be trying to get up towards that onslaught of shadows. There's no real jungle for him, but Selfie does back away in time and will spot out Kyrie as he goes into the enemy jungle.
And you can see as soon as his Spidey senses kick in, he was already playing up towards the top side where they've got good vision on that mid lane. Knowing Ghost isn't available from Kyrie, there is that window still available for Kyrie to get in there, but very unlikely he'd be able to get all the way into the lane. But still, that threat, if we see Selfie playing like that, that's what can be exploited. That's what people have done to Selfie before. As, you know, Selfie's been one of those players that back and forth has kind of had those moments where he can be exploited from his cockiness.
He certainly can, and to be fair to him, in his summer debut, in his summer performance in the last Challenger, him being on Misfits, he was one of the big carries for the team. Yeah. We have to remember that he was that hyper-aggressive, dominant laner that often built a lot of his team's advantages, but at the same time he was punished for that aggression. His cockiness, as you rightly said, often threw away a lot of their goal leads, and I think back to that one loss throughout the regular season was a large part of just Selfie just being a little bit too big for his boots.
Spada's going to catch him out. Here comes the Realm Warp as well. Lulex gets chained up and Blank joins the party. Kirei now jumping in on towards Lulex, and this is just a dead Ivan. Great collapse by PSG.
Really good invade from PSG. Spruttle taking advantage of the fact that the bottom lane of Schalke had been forced back to base. He moves up towards the enemy jungle along with Kyrie. Blank had already gotten the push on the middle lane, and the collapse overall from PSG was clean enough to get themselves first blood.
And they still have Onslaught of Shadows if they want to come mid here. Kyrie Ghost available. This is Selfie pushing. We were talking about this.
He hasn't got flash. He can't be in this situation, and PSG punish. Shockwave is great. Selfie trying to get underneath the turret. He might escape. The overload doesn't quite connect. The final auto, the final shot. Blank sniped him down.
You can say Blank shots on target 1, goals 1 as PSG go 2-0 up in this game. This has been a great start for PSG, and this is what they needed to do with this composition. Get the Rise rolling, get this engage tool, this skirmishes working in their favor, and PSG have got a good platform to build on with this later game composition.
And it is great to see Kyrie having so much more of an impact in the early game, where he's taking advantage of the fact that Lulix can't quite match that. The rotation from the jungle into the mid lane to punish the fact that Orianna still had no flash is going to do so much work for this Rise, who the only answer for in the later game will be Jace, but then who's going to stop the Shen? You have these two big split push possibilities as Vander face checks the brush.
Yeah, it's not going to be too happy with this. Plus the Strangle Thorn's down, and here comes Smitty J. Schalke able to get themselves on the scoreboard.
That was nasty. Kyrie was coming up top to try and punish Smitty J from pushing. Well, why was he pushing? Oh, because the bot lane are roaming up. It's that play we've seen out of a couple of teams over the last week or so where, okay, we're losing bot lane. Let's just cut our losses, get ourselves a tower. We know PSG will likely equalize it, but look at the tower health difference here. Sivir eventually gets it, but way faster for Schalke.
It also denies PSG the opportunity to use that Shen cross-map ultimate play.
Yeah.
The possibility of a dive on the bottom lane was so high because of the amount of poke that both Upset and Vander were consistently taking. They knew that they had push priority top. They make the rotation. They get a red buff onto Smitty J. They get themselves the first tower blood, and now they have actually closed the goal gap.
And this is actually a significant play here, because normally when this happens, the team that take bot tower also take Drake and likely get first tower blood for that extra little bit of gold as well. So it tends to be just a way of getting out of a bad situation and getting something instead of nothing. There's no dragon to take because Kyrie was dead. Schalke got the extra gold for the first tower. Good position for him.
Also, really intelligent use of the jungle by them as well. Schalke actually gave blue buff across towards Vander, knowing they were going to put a lot of people top lane, and they want the ability for that Zyra to spam out spells as they go for the turret push. So instead of giving it to the Ori, they give it across to Vander, and there are effectively 6 buffs on the map for Schalke at the moment, because they stole the enemy red, they had the blue, and they had their own red, and it's just buff city for Schalke 04.
So where does this go from here? We have to look at, like, what's the next step to this play? Well, bot tower for Schalke is likely where they're going to put the Jace. Try and drag the Shen down there, have this matchup that you know ends up pushing. Now that kind of paints a bit of a target on Smitty J's back, because he's now there with no tower, and if he pushes with nobody around, the Rise will collapse, the Hecarim will collapse, the Shen is not going to be on his own, and that's exactly what is starting to happen here. You can see PSG setting up for it, but Smitty J knows something's up. Rise is off the map. That doesn't happen without something, you know, terribly wrong going on.
Smitty J's running away, but is he going to be quick enough? Onslaught in, Blank there as well. Smitty taken low. Ivan tries to come in with the trigger seed. Daisy there to help, and Smitty J will fall. Once again, PSG see their moment, and they strike.
Schalke, the proactivity play was good from them in the top lane, but they decide to send Jace into a lane that was pushing. He has no turret to keep himself safe. He didn't have the vision control in the river to effectively make that play, and as you said, Stress, he was aware that something was going wrong, but there just wasn't enough time to react to it. The sprinting was just too great from the side of PSG. They get the collapse down onto Smitty J, and they net themselves another kill.
It's so difficult to deal with that Rise. As soon as he disappears from mid lane, he can make pretty much his distance half the way across the rift and really punish you. You could see the focus was on top side for Schalke. They were looking for that top tower, which is still fairly low, but Pilot's waiting.
Vander is going to lock them up with the Grasping Boots. Stranglethorns comes down as well. The TP in. Pilot. Stand United is going to join him. Steve off towards the back of the fight. Here comes Smitty J. He finished the TP. I assumed he cancelled it. Onto Spattle. So much damage coming out. Smitty J caught between a rock and a hard place. PSG collapse and get the kill.
He teleports into an exhaust without a flash. 1v4. there was no real way of Smitty J from, you know, staying alive in that. It looked like Schalke were all committing to the fight, but as Pilot cut in and cancelled Upset's ultimate, all of the team fighting prowess of Schalke just kind of disappeared.
And I feel as though Schalke just didn't respect the Shen ultimate right there, because they thought they could force the play. They tried to use the TP, and they didn't realize that Sivir was coming in from the flank with full TP. Look, they don't see this collapse coming in from behind. Upset is forced to flash out immediately. They think they've got a great collapse onto Kyrie, especially with Lulex coming in from the river, but then it's the surprise jungle gank from Pyre, swooping in from the rear and turning the entire fight in their favor.
And Blanc also beat Ori to the punch. Like, Selfie didn't roam fast enough. Of course, running Cleanse doesn't have Ghost to be able to match it. It's against a Ryze, so I guess you got to kind of expect that Ryze can make it a little faster, but still, PSG have such a fast ability to collapse on people as soon as the situation is in their favor that Schalke just are going to get caught out time and time again like this.
Yeah, now PSG have taken the advantages they needed to in the early game. They're starting to get these item spikes. They're starting to scale up. Schalke 04 looking pretty weak at this moment in the game, assuming PSG can continue to pile on the pressure. Looking tough for Schalke.
For me, the big question mark for PSG now is how well they can play around the mid-game. Because last week, we saw them get advantages in their game versus Fnatic Academy, and they did nothing. They didn't know how to set up vision. They didn't know how to force objectives. They didn't properly know how to utilize their team composition. And right now, what they need to be doing is setting up vision around the top half of the map and forcing this tier 1 turret, just like Schalke is doing on the bottom half of the map.
And Schalke are doing a good job of this. They've recognized that with Hecarim on the top side, with PSG still kind of pushed in after that last play, this is where Jace has the ability to come down to the bot lane for a moment. But here comes the TP coming through, actually. This is not the Shen ult, it's just Steve TPing into the lane. He has flashed a taunt flash.
Yeah, Upset has nothing. Upset is just stuck in an awful situation. Caught out on the Jhin. It was Pilot last week, it's Upset this week. And PSG get the kill.
Unfortunately for Upset, there was little to nothing that he could do. He tried to push out the wave. He didn't respect the possible collapse from PSG. And while they will lose a tier 1 in the bottom, they should be able to get themselves the return tower in the top lane.
And Steve recalled out. He's already looking to try and defend that bot side tower here. So yes, there is a Jace, but as soon as Shen gets there, a lot of that tower push is somewhat mitigated. Shen can at least cut the wave out from underneath him. Blanc has to be a little careful. Ivan's around here. Lulex is looking for a gank on mid, but can't get it.
Yeah, Blanc's positioning in the mid lane was always focused up towards that top side of the map, knowing, of course, that Ivan and Jace could come in and could try and put some pressure down. And we've got about, we're 15 minutes in. Both teams have played pretty well thus far. I think Schalke have been on the back foot a lot of the time. Let's have a quick look across the scoreboard and see what items are getting completed. Black Cleaver, Last Whisper finished on Smitty J. Opens up the curtain call. Pilot caught out, trying to get the kill on Vander. Gets him. Flashes. Can he dodge the final shot? He can. Pilot escapes and takes down the kill.
Fancy footwork from Pilot to kind of two-step his way through there. Here comes Blanc.
Blanc coming in, Upset once again. No summoners for him. Has got the redemption, of course. The Shen ult will join him up, and now Upset should go down to PSG. Chase him out. Nothing Lulex can do. And that's been the story of this game.
The dribbling from PSG is unreal as of right now, getting themselves 7 kills on the board, returning the tower in the top lane, and really setting themselves up for success.
Yeah, setting him up. Vander was going to just go aggressive here, trying to cut the wave, deny any ability of taking the tower down. Pilot clearly laced his boots up pretty tightly because this is some fancy stepping around the Jhin ultimate, and then Upset thinks he's in, thinks he's got the opportunity, and suddenly Blanc comes into the fight. Uh-oh, that's a Ryze with a Shen ult on top of him. It doesn't even matter about a redemption there.
That. Even Lulex coming in from the flank with
He's
Daisy.
off. He's gone.
He's just like, I'm up, boys. Nothing could be done.
This is nice, though. This setup here, Smitty J moved over to mid lane while that was going on, but he's got caught out.
Oh, he fails the flash. He needs to be substituted after that. Blanc will take him down. 8-1 PSG.
Oh, that was almost such a nice play. As soon as I'm trying to, compliment them on bringing the Jace, this sieging monster, over to a tower that had nobody there. Problem is he didn't get the tower, stuck around a couple of seconds too long, and then just the mechanical error, the misflash didn't get him over the wall.
And this is such a different PSG to what we saw in week 1, because we were wondering, how are these guys now going to do in the mid-game? Will they be able to set up properly for these objectives? And while Schalke are definitely forcing things, PSG are not caving. They are responding to the pressure. They are making plays of their own, and they are the ones that are consistently coming out on top.
People who are counting PSG out last week because they had 1 week bad performance, they have such a backroom staff. They've got Yellow Star there as head of esports. He's had many a time where his team's lost, and then next week you come back, you try harder, you improve, And that's exactly what PSG have done.
And while it may not seem super connected, I mean, they played against the Fnatic Academy with Broxah.
Yeah.
And that, we saw the night and day difference of Fnatic Academy today. and it certainly seems like Broxah made a massive impact on that series. Now Kairi has found himself a fair amount of comfort on this Hecarim, pushed onto a Hecarim because of so many bans all of the way. He's now got that Triforce completed. That's step one of this. Next step is, you know, whatever else he's looking for with the Mercury Treads likely coming out from it and getting more damage, more survivability to get through these fights.
Pick himself up a Spirit's Visage just to deal with all the relentless magic damage that's going to be in the top side. But now Selfie, is he going to go for the... I was going to say 1v1, but then I realized two other people are right behind him. So not quite the outplay. But now you can see that actually PSG are setting up for their own 1-3-1. They've moved Ryze down into the bottom lane. They've sent Steve up to the top. And their 3-man unit is just acting as wave clear and pressure in the mid lane.
And they have almost everything available. I mean, the Shen ultimate's there. You've got the Ryze ult. You've got teleports almost up. So PSG just can spread out. Pilot and Spreadle theoretically don't die. Karma, Civ are very difficult to lock down and kill. So PSG are in a fantastic spot with this 4-0 Ryze.
And we're starting to see what we talked about in Pick and Ban. The 1-3-1 from PSG and the attempted answer from Schalke. They've got Orianna up in the top side. They've got Jace down here, but they just can't clear the waves quickly enough because PSG are so far ahead.
And the problem is Jhin is hurting. Upset, not only has he been caught out a couple of times, Jin's hurting because he's giving over a lot of farm to Smitty J in these side lanes as well, and Upset has to pull back away a lot of the time. So he's behind on itemization, hasn't got to the point where he's got anywhere near that edge of night yet, whereas Pilot is in a good spot. Mid lane, Kairi just looking in for the tower at this point. Tower trades across the map.
Would like to give some praise, though, to Lulex this game in particular, because a lot of his time may not have spent looking like he was doing much, but he was always, map-wise, in the right place at the right time. We just saw there, the tier 2 in the top lane being taken by Selfie. He was allowed to do that because of this deep vision that Lulex had actually set up in the top half of the map. He was providing a bit of extra utility onto Selfie, adding Daisy on there to make the tower siege that bit easier. So even though he might not be having the same sort of jungle presence that Kairi is having in terms of kills, he is certainly making up for it in terms of map control and support.
As much as I agree with you, I'd much prefer to have Kairi on my team this game.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
He picks up kills and stuff. It's understandable that Lulex isn't going to have the same impact playing someone like an Ivan as he did when he was playing the Kha'Zix last time. You don't have that early aggression. You can't do as much, but we've seen Ivan still impact the game in the early portions. We've seen Broxah last week especially, very aggressive, willing to step into the enemy jungle. And now Lulex is very much a support here. He's not actually helping his team out that much in fights.
And then you remember he's Ivan, and he brings Daisy with a knock-up and a redemption, and he can kind of kill anything.
Yep.
But so it's still not over for Schalke.
No, definitely.
I would completely agree with you that you know, Kairi in this game has been on fire with setting up team fights, and he's going to continue to do so. It's only going to get worse for Schalke if they can start grouping with even more powerful members like Sivir, who's now Rapid Fire Cannon complete on top of that. So PSG have really strong team fighting, even now on a 2-item Sivir with this Ryze. The two of them in combination are going to destroy Schalke if they don't start hitting shockwaves.
And it's all good to say, you know, when you look at Orianna and you think, oh, she's always been a good team fighter, right? She is a champion that naturally works in these team fights, but pair up with a Jhin, like, he's going to be sitting on the back line getting a lot of poke, typically known for his siege, and while he definitely has a lot of damage, his team fighting isn't what excels him, right, as an AD carry. This is why I was very critical of why they chose Orianna over the Corki. I think from a composition perspective, it would have fit much better. The poke would have been a lot easier. Their siege would have been more powerful.
Uh-oh.
As we see the rotation now, collapse down onto Selfie.
Even though they're not able to catch the fight, this should drag enough people over to this side of the map. Stops them from making any play on mid. You can see Pilot is there. And theoretically, without PSG making a significant mistake, their mid tower should never fall. They have a Ryze, they have a Sivir, they have a Karma. Like, these are champions that will defend that mid tower to the death.
It is pretty low at the moment. I mean, it's only probably about 300 or 400 HP, and it looks like PSG are setting up for their mid tower as well. It's odd to see a second tier tower go down before that mid has actually been taken, but it's been a lot of trading between these two teams, opposite sides of the map, just saying, yeah, you take two, we'll take two, sort of idea. And
a lot of that is just the itemization, sorry, not itemization, champions that are played in the mid lane right now. The Oriannas, the Ryzes, the Corkis, all of these champions very good at just sitting there clearing without really too much threat being put on them. So that's kind of how this game state has ended up like this, is no team can push down that mid tower quite yet without diving.
But if you're PSG, the next objective you're really looking at is Dragon, right?
Right.
45 seconds on the board. We've already talked a lot about their ability to not only split up the map with their 1-3-1, but their potency for team fighting. And the fact that that objective is going to be spawning soon means that they can keep pressure top, they can keep pressure bot, and they should be able to just force the Dragon without much contest.
Here comes Blank in from the side onto Upset. Stand United used onto Pilot. He's just diving, going for it, man. He gets the kill. However, Smitty J is going to try and cut him off. Low on mana, keeping up with a fight. Blank off towards the side. Shockwave on him. He's still pretty healthy here. Tries to realm warp away. Dodging. Can't get away. Selfie takes him down. Pilot and Steve managed to escape from Smitty J, mostly because it was 2v1. But Schalke are going to try and collapse. Flash away by Pilot. There's a blast cone there. Steve can't get there. He gets knocked the other way, though. The synergy is unreal. Steve has flash, has taunt, tries to dash away. Lulex says, not today, my friend. I'm going to chase you down if it's all I've got. And they will take down Steve in the fight. Selfie gets 2 kills in the fight.
I feel like Pilot, while it might have looked like a good blast clone at first, maybe you should have waited a little bit longer for your teammate as you sentence him to death. And now Schalke make their way over towards the Dragon and pick up a neutral objective and really be the overall winners of that fight.
Look, Vedi, it feels like they have to maybe meet up with some more football players from the organization.
Maybe.
Got to get some of their synchronized. But I'm not going to be disrespectful. There's a D word. It's it's an Olympic sport. Like, just got to get some of that jumping and.
Pilot saw a ball and he just had to kick it. You know? So
Yeah. But you can see how the dive from Pilot is so good. He realizes that with the Shen shield, he can easily go for the setup, especially with the Karma setup too. Kyrie has to ult defensively, which kind of leaves Blank on the back foot. He stays a little bit longer than he should. I think that was a misclick realm warp, if I'm being honest, thinking that his Rise ultimate was the same as it used to be. Unfortunately for him, it is not. And then we didn't catch the back end of the escape, but it was great that PSG had committed so hard for Schalke, because then they could just slowly chase down their opponents and net themselves a couple of extra kills.
You can see, though, Pilot is in no situation where he feels like he's getting caught out. Just, he is so far ahead in this game, runs just out of the curtain call. Doesn't really matter to him at this point.
Has to flash away, though. Spazzle had to use flash there, and it is the on the hunt burnt as well from Pilot, so if they start a fight soon, they can perhaps catch him out. I want to bring attention to the gold here, because the entire game, PSG have looked quite a long way ahead, but it's only been 2,000 or 3,000 gold lead for them. Nowhere near as substantial as it might seem at first glance.
Right, and it doesn't feel particularly substantial with that as an isolated factor, but then we start bringing the team compositions into it. This Sivir already getting close to 3 items, getting stronger and stronger. You've got a Rise that is going to be able to do the same. The last fight kind of broke apart because PSG got fractured, and a lot of their damage went one way, while their tanks and Rise went the other way. And if that happens again, there's a chance for Schalke to come back into it. But if Pilot sticks sort of close to Blank and Steve and Kyrie, it should be fairly straightforward fights.
Bear in mind that Pilot has a 3,000 gold lead over his 80 carry counterpart, right? That is so big when you look at 80 carries. The only reason why the gold gap isn't bigger is because Smitty J has been maintaining a decent gold advantage over his lane counterpart up in the top lane, which is largely coming from the farmers. Now Kirei looking for a collapse onto Selfie.
That's not a misclick. Blank wants this fight. Stand United. Selfie tries to get away, but you cannot escape today.
And I love what happened in that. Blank standing on the edge of the Realm Warp rather than in the middle, just so that no chance of a ball randomly being in the middle with a Shockwave, of course, getting out of dodge for that. And PSG instantly turned for the Baron. TP coming out from Smitty J. They want to contest.
Yeah, PSG go for it. 6,000 HP on it. Lulex is around the corner and has Smite, so there's always the possibility of a steal. Look at the damage! Holy moly, PSG get melted in the back of the pit! Everyone's just dead! PSG, what are you doing? Schalke come straight in and take out 3, and now they turn their eyes to the Baron. They get it! Steve's going down! Blank's going down! Everyone has been decimated! And Schalke make a huge play!
That was the worst possible thing that could have ever happened to PSG. Smitty J combined with Vander are the true MVPs of that play. Shock blast into the multi-man route, followed by the Zyra ultimate, made for perfect team coordination to secure themselves the Baron. Things that were going so wrong have gone so right for Schalke.
And just like that, Schalke have completely turned the game around. As you said, the poke into the pit, massive damage came through from Schalke, and PSG, it looked great for them in this setup, and as Lulex comes in, it's all about stalling, just enough time to get Smitty J in position. Shock Blast hits 3 people, does massive damage, and this decision to go for Baron against a Jace against Vander being able to get into the pit, giving away the Baron might just be the own goal that really gives Schalke the win in this game, because everything we've talked about with compositions still does count, but Schalke are going to get so much gold influx from this Baron buff that PSG are going to end up way further behind than they should be.
The thing is, if you're PSG in that situation, you just use the Baron to pay the fight. There's no need for you to definitely go for the 50-50 smite. There's no reason for you to commit so hard to an objective that can so easily be stolen or disrupted. You just use what you have left, you turn around on the hunt, you force the engage onto 4 members. They're already split up anyway. It should have been a clean fight for PSG, and instead they throw it all away.
It feels like Schalke have pushed this game into extra time. Great steal. Of course, Lulex doing a superb job being disruptive with Daisy in the back of the pit, which is incredibly impactful. And now PSG will be reeling a little bit. They'll be thinking, we had this game plan. We knew what we wanted to do. We had our formation set. The enemy has turned it on its head.
And the problem is now when Smitty J goes out to the side lane, looks for that push with the Baron minions, it's going to be so difficult for Shen to at least maintain presence here. If he doesn't back away, he will get caught out if Steve sticks around. Oh, what started so well for PSG has gone so horribly wrong. Smitty J is going to just go for it.
It's all it takes, though. They have a 1-3-1 composition, but when the enemy has Baron, they can push those waves so much quicker, especially with someone like a Jace who's so good at taking down towers. Smitty J's really stepped up into his own in that split push role now.
But look at this, right? Minimap top lane, you can see a slow push has started to accrue for the team of Schalke. This is the 1-4 that we wanted to see, so that you actually have 3 threats. All you then need to do is keep rotating between mid, bot. When that massive wave hits the tower, you have the Baron empowered minions knocking on the door of the base, and there's nothing that PSG can do to stop it.
Well, Curtain Call opens up, Daisy down as well, Blank looking for the flank, Kire was there. They decided against going for the all-in engage. Schalke.
Steve, so low already.
Just taking so much damage. Has that Warden's Mail as well, but Jace just melts through it with lethality, with the Black Cleaver. It's so difficult for Steve to face up in that 1v1. And look at the damage onto the turret as well. That's just dead. The inhibitor tower is down. And Schalke continue to push in. Once again, Kire looking for a flank here.
He's looking.
This might be desperation for
Edge
PSG.
of Night's on.
Edge of Night is down, as you say. Kire gets onto Smitty J, but it's not the onslaught you want. The Orianna Shockwave used as well. Here comes Smitty. Everyone's dead once again. The front line was the back line, and now Blank is getting caught out. Kire chased up towards the side. Schalke have no fear as they step forward once again. They need this inhibitor, and PSG might not be able to defend the final push. There are still 3 members left alive, but Baron remains on Smitty J.
That's pretty much going to be the game here. Schalke just pushing in. I don't really think PSG can stop this.
So commanding of a performance from Schalke. After one single Baron, they make their way towards PSG's base, they break into it, and they take themselves an even Nexus turret. Fantastic performance and fantastic display of dominance.
Smart play by them as well. Look at this. Kire is so desperate for a flank.
And he just can't get it. Upset Edge of Night was still there. Smitty J gets the shield on top of him, everything. They turn it back around, and Pilot's at the front of the fight because he's trying to play the Sivir, trying to just, get as many of these crits through the fight as he can, but it's overstepping and going back to last week. What we saw with Pilot dying in the fights is costing PSG at a critical point in the game.
It just seems to be a lack of respect from Pilot. You know that Zyra ultimate is going to act as such a massive tool to prevent the front line from being able to support the back line. And if you are not going to respect it, you're going to get punished for it. So many times we've seen Pilot experience this last week, and we thought that he had improved. We thought he'd fixed a lot of these issues. It happens in the Baron pit. It happens once again here. And while he is definitely not the reason as to why this team is losing, he's definitely a point of improvement that PSG needs to look to fix.
We were talking about it earlier as well, though. PSG last week had a great early game. Like, the early game was strong. They played well. And then mid to late, they just let up, and that's what this game feels like. A few bad decisions, and the curtain opens once again as Schalke look to close out the game. Won't be able to catch onto too many people.
And that's why you've got to play the proverbial 90 minutes, right? It's not just the beginning of the game. Okay, you get ahead, you get everything that you wanted. Arise gets to 4-0 at one point, but if you let off the gas, if you don't fully take control, it can always turn back around.
It's just like in rugby when you have a 16-11 lead, there's 10 minutes left on the clock. If you ease up, you end up getting punished for it.
I wasn't the one trying to write smarmy tweets at other people. Anyway, but yes, I think the thing is as well, PSG haven't lost this game yet. They still do have hope at coming back. It's just diminishing by the second as once again an inhibitor tower falls.
A good team fight. If they can get pilots safely through a team fight with the ricochet damage, that can turn this game back in their favor. But the time is running out for that. Kyrie wants to force it.
He keeps going for this force and keeps just meeting a brick wall from Schalke. That Stand United down and it did nothing.
That is such a big ultimate loss to PSG. If Kyrie wants to force the engage,
Here he goes.
I don't think he's going to make it work.
Well, he's going in, not used on Thought of Shadows yet. Knocks Selfie, he's just run away. He's not going in the right direction, and PSG just have to retreat. And Schalke just like, yeah, fine, you use your ultimates. We'll just walk up to top lane and take the tower.
He just cannot get enough done anymore, and this is the problem now. The Heck Room without the Stand United, without the Onslaught of Shadows, offers nothing here. Steve is the only real one that can get a fight started while that ultimate from Kyrie is down, and even then, that puts him in such a tough spot.
I love the patience as well from Schalke. They'll take a turret and they'll take a quick step back, just in case PSG are looking for engage, and then they'll step forward again when PSG don't get what they want.
Schalke do have to be careful. A Rise Baron call, if they just throw it at it, Realm Warp in,
They're already
would be
pinging it.
enough. Yeah, exactly. They're looking for it because Schalke completely backed away. However, they've taken too long. That needed to be a Realm Warp into the pit if they were looking for it, but they've taken too long.
Too slow.
Smitty J's
We know it's
TPing in.
taking too long. I don't think PSG
Oh,
know
they
it's
can't be
taking
in the
too
pit
long.
again.
The Colonel call comes down. Here comes the shot blast, and here comes Smitty J and Schalke. They try and get away, but they are melted to pieces. PSG lose the Baron, lose the bite, and they're gonna lose this game.
The same mistake twice is putting Schalke now in such a commanding position. They're going to end this game. There was no Stand United. Pilot barely got away from that situation. Schalke are going to take this win.
PSG had to go for the desperation play. It does not work out, and it looks like that after a fantastic early game from PSG will result in nothing as Schalke make their way onto the Nexus.
It's not over until the final whistle blows, and that whistle will be the sound of the Nexus dying as Schalke go 1-0 up over Paris Saint-Germain.
Ah, and it looked so good. It looked so good for PSG. The way they started the game was great. The way that they got themselves into, you know, getting the Rise set up, getting Civis set up, everything looked great, but the Baron calls killed it for them. The two, and that was all it took to
And
turn
all
the
they
game.
had to do was use the Baron as a means to fight. It wasn't an objective you had to force. Even if it's on 4k HP, you can just leave it and go, let's turn on the Zyra, who's right outside the pit. We have a Sivir ultimate. We have 5 members. Ivan can't provide the utility. We can just kill Zyra. Now it's a 5v3. Our chances of Baron are a little bit better. Hey, why not go into the Jhin that's completely cut off? Like, the fact that they decided to go for that decision of commit or disengage really is what decided the game, and it's such a shame to lose a game like that after you play the early game so impressively well.
It also means that this will be the only two teams that aren't 2-2. So we now know that actually Schalke will be in first position and PSG will be in last position at the end of today. They can still change it a little bit, of course, with wins here or there, but it's still, that's going to be how the table stands at the end of the day.
But when you think about it as well, the fact that PSG are now the only team yet to get a win in the Challenger Series means that the bracket starts to open up. Points really do matter, especially getting yourself those 2-0s will get you those 6 points and really starts to create a gap.
And considering the teams that have kind of changed their fortune this week, they don't get an opportunity against Fnatic Academy now. PSG already lost that matchup, and now Fnatic Academy don't seem in the best of places. I mean, what's going to happen with like Kinguin and Misfits? Like, the power of all of the teams has shifted in just 1 week.
I thought PSG were going to be a team that shifted their fortunes
Yeah,
as well. That early
looked
game
like
was
it.
impressive. They played it very well, especially, I think most people are agreeing Schalke were the best team in the league at the moment. It could change, of course. Kinguin looked very strong today, as did Millennium, but Schalke really performing outstandingly.
But when I look back at that early game, I have to add a lot of criticism for Upset because he was getting caught out a lot.
Yeah.
He was overextending. He wasn't respecting the possible collapse from Kire. He was giving away a lot of free kills, and while he definitely made up for it once they were in more control of the game, the fact that he was such a big part of that early deficit could hinder them moving into game 2.
It just looked like he was behind the curve on the opponent's play. They were just coming straight to him, killing him. So we'll see whether he can fix that in game 2.
Well, that we will. As the players grab their halftime oranges, we're going to take a short break. Join us in 3:30 for the second half. Baba's going to catch him out. Here comes the Realm Warp as well. Lulex gets chained up and Blank joins the party. Kire now jumping in on towards Lulex, and this is just a dead Ivan. Great collapse.
This is Selfie pushing. We were talking about this.
He hasn't got flash. He can't be in this situation, and PSG punish. Shockwave is great. Selfie trying to get underneath the turret. He might escape. The overload doesn't quite connect. The final auto, the final shot. Blank sniped him down. Here comes Blank in from the side onto Upset. Stand United used on the pilot. He's just diving. Go in for it, man. He gets the kill. However, Smitty J is going to try and cut him off. Low on mana, keeping up with the fight. Blank off towards the side. Shockwave on him. He's still pretty healthy here. Tries to Realm Warp away. Dodging. Can't get away. Selfie takes him down. Edge of Night is down, as you say. Kire gets onto Smitty J, but it's not the onslaught you want. The Oriana Shockwave used as well. Here comes Smitty. Everyone's dead once again. The front line was the back line, and now Blank is getting caught out. Kire chased off towards the side. Schalke have no fear, and here comes Smitty J and Schalke. They try and get away, but they are melted to pieces. PSG lose the Baron, lose the fight, and they're gonna lose this game.
After a fantastic early game from PSG will result in nothing as Schalke make their way onto the Nexus.
It's not over until the final whistle blows, and that whistle will be the sound of the Nexus dying as Schalke go 1-0 up over Paris Saint-Germain.